Good morning. Welcome to the Community Wild Goose. I'm wearing this little pendant here because, oh, there we go. There's a shiny little deal. Kind of a wild goose looking thing. And it says on the back, speak your truth. And I give those out when we do our splash-tisms to some of our guys. And when we go out in the back of the building and I throw bottled water at them and call it a splash-tism. So we're getting close to gathering, and I don't have a solid date yet. We're still trying to work out the details, but hopefully we'll be able to start real soon. I was looking at the Sunday after Mother's Day. Now I'm looking at the second Sunday, and either the second Sunday after Mother's Day, which I think it might be the last Sunday of this month of May, or the first Sunday of June. So we're looking at how what that's going to look like. All right. So today I titled this message today of remember that song? One is the loneliest number that you'll ever know. Two can be as bad. Remember that one? Yeah. I love that song. But as I was getting ready for today's message, I started thinking, in theological terms, one isn't the loneliest number because one would be the least lonely number. Yeah, thanks, Irma. 3 Dog Night. It would be the least. By the way, Irma, I want to listen to what you're doing at 11 o'clock. So I've got to figure out how to record that. So what you're doing is pretty awesome. I didn't know you were doing a program. So that's really cool. So thanks for coming in here before you broadcast yours. One is actually the least lonely. The feeling of being separate is what is lonely, not being one, because when we think in terms of one, remember in Genesis, it says he shall cleave to his wife and the two shall become one. We talk about oneness. Jesus says in his prayer that just sounds like things are so intertwined and messy, where he prays for his followers. He says, and for us, God, I pray that they would see themselves in me and I in them, that I would be in them, that they would be in you, that you would be in me, that I would be in you, and we would be in them, and they would be in us. It's such a mess. How could that possibly be true? And I was thinking about this message last night, and I had a dream that Jesus and Kermit were talking, Kermit the Frog. And it went a little bit something like this. Hey, Jesus, I wrote this song, and it says, all of us under its spell, we know it's probably magic. Have you been half asleep? And have you heard voices? I've heard them calling my name. Is this the sweet sound that calls the young sailors? The voice that might be one and the same? All right, so I won't do the voice anymore. Is this the sweet sound that calls the young sailors? The voice might be one and the same. Have you heard that song? Do you know what song that is? All right, so this next verse might give it away. I flipped the verses so that I could do that one first. What's so amazing that keeps us stargazing? And what do we think we might see? Someday we'll find it, the rainbow connection, the lovers, the dreamers, and me. And you know what? That's what really makes science so spectacular. The stargazing, the wonderment. What is this all about? And there was a guy that I was reading, and I can't remember his name, but he said that he ran into a physicist at a food court at the airport, and he asked him about quantum entanglement. He said, are things all really related when it comes to quantum entanglement? And he said, yes, all things are related. And that basic idea of quantum entanglement, I'll read it to you, is that two particles can be intimately linked to each other, even if they are separated by millions of light years in space. That's profound. A change induced in one will affect the other. This is a mystery. How can a change in one particle immediately affect the other at such great distance? Unless, of course, the two are somehow really one. Science is catching up to what Jesus and the mystics have always known. Reality is relational and undivided. It's one, not two. That oneness. So two becoming one is more of an understanding and an awareness and a giving yourself to the realization that you never were two separately, you were one. Now, it doesn't war against the distinctiveness of our individuality. The problem is our individuality and our demand for it interferes with this understanding of oneness. See, there's a huge paradox, I think, to just kind of go away from the second, but there's a paradox that has happened. Then I'm becoming an observer of this, and I want to pay attention to it. That during the COVID situation, we were forced into oneness. And in our oneness, we were lonely, we were separate, but there were some things that caused us to be connected. You know, the images that we saw of grandchildren going to visit their grandparents in the nursing home and pressing their hand against the glass and the other hand of the grandparent touching through the glass, making eye contact. And we all feel so sad that this had to occur. Well, you know what? I got news for you. I wonder if some of those grandparents didn't get visits from their grandchildren because their children, their nucleus, their family, were neglecting. But the situation, our present circumstances, caused us, see, in their loneliness, now they want things to do, go out, press the glass of those who are enclosed in the nursing home. I know that sounds like a horrible indictment, but it is an indictment on myself and how I was with my own grandmother and how we are and how we neglect the oneness that we have with others. We neglected that. It seems as though during COVID, we found ways to reach out even to those we never reached out to before. And that fear that drives us together sometimes creates that understanding that we're all in this together. We still fight against it. We still fight against it. We see others as the enemy. What if those that we genuinely do not like at all, do not agree with their politics or whatever they are, whatever religion they are, and we despise being in the presence or having a discussion with them, whatever it is, what if we were to realize the quantum entanglement that whatever we do impacts the others, no matter how much distance is between us? I'll give you an example of a study that was done that I found so amazing with this idea of quantum entanglement. And it even gives us a little bit of an understanding of the impact of our energy and our prayers and our thoughts in the things that we put our attention to. They did a study one time, and I'm sure I've probably repeating myself with this study, but they did a study one time where they wanted to understand the idea of quantum entanglement and see how it really works. See, data can't be transferred. We cannot communicate using intentionally the data of quantum entanglement. It just occurs. There's a mystery that goes on in this impact of all being relational. But they took these couples who had been married 50 years or more. And, well, you know what? I want to tell that story in a minute. There was another story on the issue of prayer. Does prayer have an impact on people? Does it really make tangible change in in the illnesses of others when there is prayer going on. And so they did this research on people who meditated, prayed, focus, contemplation, whatever it was, and on that one person who is ill. And they did these studies with those who received prayer that came from people, who were prayer people, and people who did not receive prayer, poor guys that didn't get the attention there, but they had that as a group here. The ones that didn't get prayer, the ones that did get this regular prayer, to see if their health improved. And guess what? I know you're going to think I know you think I'm going to say their health improved, but it didn't. It stayed exactly the same. As a matter of fact, for some reason, the group that didn't get any prayer from these folks, their health improved cumulatively more than the other ones who had received prayer. Now, we could stop that and go, well, you know what? See, that's what I thought. Prayer doesn't work. As a matter of fact, it can make things worse. But they instead changed the study the next time. And instead of having these people who claim to be people of prayer and practice these things all the time, they had people who knew these individuals, had love for them, that would pray for them. And they prayed, and over a period of time, their research showed that their health did improve. Love was the missing ingredient. That connection of love, the bonding, the quantum entanglement possibly moved matter quickly. How could that possibly be? Here's another study. So they took couples who were married 50 years or more, and they didn't tell the couples what the study was going to be for. They kind of did an overview in another area to not give away what their study was, so that they could get some pure results from that. And by the way, for only $39.99, you can write in here, and I'll send you this little pendant, and write your check to Henry Rojas, $39.99. So no, don't do that. I get easily distracted. So where was I? Now, see, I'm not with people, so usually people in the front row tell me where I was. The couples that all right. So they took these couples that had 50 years of marriage or more, and they needed to report that their marriages were good and healthy. They loved each other, that they were, fairly functional in this long relationship. And they separated them into different rooms and hooked up the one person with some blood pressure, skin temperature, and whatever other electrodes they did to measure their body heat, whatever it was. So they put them in one room, and then in the other room they had their partner look at a picture of them. So they said we're going to flash a picture up on the screen of your spouse, and we would like you just think only of them. Think of how much you love them. Think of them and what they mean in your life. And do this for only 1 or 2 minutes. They're going to put the picture up there and then take the picture down. And while they did that, they measured the body temperature, the blood pressure, the heart rate of the spouse in the other room. So here they are in separate rooms, not knowing what this study was going to entail, that they had volunteered for. And in every case, the blood pressure, body temperature, and sometimes even the heart rate increased during that short period of time. Isn't that incredible? Some evidence-based studies done on the area of quantum entanglement. Do we know how it works? No, they don't. From what I understand, it's a mystery. I mean, I'm no physicist. I'm just repeating things. I'm a Googleist, not a physicist. But I find that absolutely powerful. Here's what a physicist, this young physicist who is, she's actually the first Black physicist to be on a track where with all these other individuals that is rising to the level of in the area of well, she's a professor at a university, and she's a physicist, and she's as a Black physicist, she is breaking barriers, which is really cool. So she got interviewed. And she wrote a book called The Disordered Cosmos, A Journey into Dark Matter. Her name is Shonda Prescott Weinstein. And she says particle physics just made it seem like there is a universe out there and that life isn't just about what's messed up on our little planet. And that was really exciting, that maybe there was a way to get away from the bad stuff. But it turned out that it wasn't just my job to do the things in physics that excite me, but to think about what I was doing in a larger social context and the impact of my work on the larger community. The question that I'm interested in ultimately is, how can we be in good relations with each other? And what is the role that scientists play and what kinds of relationships we have with each other? But also, what is the role that particle physics and cosmology can play in promoting good relations? Isn't that powerful? It's so cool. So now I want to go back and read to you the scripture that I chose, which is part of the lectionary scriptures. And it's from John 15. And here's what Jesus says. And the reason why I'm doing that in this order is because I want you to see that when we isolate the words of Jesus and take them so literally that we cannot see past vines, orchards, Good Samaritans, the miracles, and we can't see past that and see deeper into that, we will not understand this divine oneness that we need to be paying more attention to in that. You know, back to my COVID thing, I'm more fearful that people are going to leave this period of COVID and go back to thinking that they are in connection with people when they're not. They don't need to visit the nursing home and place the hand on the hand of the other and make eye contact. Okay, so Jesus says this according to John. I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine grower. He removes every branch in me that bears no fruit. Every branch that bears fruit, he prunes to make it bear more fruit. You have already been cleansed by the word that I have spoken to you. Abide in me as I abide in you. Just as the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. Those who abide in me and I in them bear much fruit, because apart from me you can do nothing. Whoever does not abide in me is thrown away like a branch and withers. Such branches are gathered, thrown into the fire, and burned. If you abide in me and my words abide in you, ask for whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. My Father is glorified by this, that you bear much fruit and become my disciples. This idea of bearing fruit because you're abiding, that's the intimacy. That intimacy produces something wonderful. The word that Henry Nouwen loves to use for that is fecundity. That the fruit that is born out, a very provocative word, but it is fruit that is born out of intimacy. Any good thing that we do without intimacy with God is just our own mechanism doing. But when we realize that it is out of a nature of goodness, that there wasn't an original sin, there was an original blessing, that there is ultimately good. And as we work in that good, we are joining forces in quantum entanglement with spirit in making a difference in this world. Now, some of the lines in that is disturbing because it talks about taking branches away and burning them. But just think in terms of your individual self and the oneness there. Think of that for a minute, how separate we can become from ourselves, our own desires. We say sometimes it's almost as if one thing is warring against me. I want to do this, but I don't do this. I don't want to do this, but I end up doing it. It sounds like addiction. We become separate within ourselves and less compassionate towards ourselves. So what if we were to say the same thing, not as taking it so literally of people being these branches, but think of those parts of yourself that war against your true self, your true nature of goodness. Where you say to those parts of yourself that hate, that envy, that war against the very things that you want to do. And your true self says, I am the vine, and the God by which I come from is the vine grower. All of goodness flows from that. That God removes every part of me that isn't true, that is false, that is self-condemning, and burns it, prunes it. That I, in my true self, am pruned, and sometimes I suffer because of it, because the things that don't define me anymore are fading away. So I need to learn to abide in my true self. I need to learn how to abide in the true divine nature of God, of compassion and love. I need to abide in the true statements about who I really am. That's why, in the true essence of what God is, though we cannot define God, is love. It's love. That is that oneness. We have a challenge, you guys. We have a challenge to be one within ourselves and to be one with others without losing the distinctiveness and the uniqueness of others. It's like I said before, it's not unity of uniformity. It's unity of diversity, that we can say, even in the most evil person that I see, due to quantum entanglement, we're connected. Ouch. And there's a little part of me in there. There's a little part of me in there. I want to find what Julian of Norwich says. Listen to these phrases by her. This phrase by her. She says, the love of God creates in us such a wanting, not winning, not W wanting, but O, wanting. I'll start it over since I interrupted. The love of God creates in us such a wanting that when it is truly seen, no person can separate themselves from another person. And in the sight of God, all humans are one. And one person is all people, and all people are one in one person. How beautiful is that? That is the only way we can understand this fecundity of intimacy between the branch and the vine and the fruit. Sounds a little bit like the Trinity, doesn't it? That interaction of the universal God, above all things, the unexplainable, the undefinable, the higher power of your higher power. Then speaking of Jesus, which I absolutely embrace because it speaks to the embodiment of this truth in our human nature. It's the metaphor, the mentor, the example of the fact that we in our physical state can embody this kind of oneness and love. And then the Spirit being activated in our work with each other and doing that which we did not find ourselves capable of doing because there was that part of ourself, that withering branch telling us that we're not enough, not right, and not in control, and that what makes us think that we could do anything in this life. And I have it in me and you have it in you, that inner critic that is in there, that sometimes those voices will be like a branch that is withered and it needs to be pruned, that your true self begins to grow and flourish and then produce fruit. Doesn't that make sense? And when we align in that way with that oneness, it's not that we find ourselves, it's not that we intentionally do good as much as that we find ourselves out of that fecundity doing good, doing well. It is a fruit. Galatians says so. The fruits of the Spirit: peace, patience, kindness, self-control. I forget the others. Look it up in Galatians. Those are fruits, not the roots of all that we come from. It is the fruit of the vine and the branch and the vine dresser having intimacy. I remember going to a church many years ago when I was in high school, and they would sing this song out of that 1 John 4:7 and 8 that says about love. And the lyrics of the song was, "Beloved, let us love one another, for love is of God, and who is without God is not love," and that whole thing. And they would sing the song and tell us to look at, scan the room and make eye contact with people and stare at each one as we're singing this song. It was so creepy and awkward and uncomfortable. And it was a pseudo example of what it means to be one. To recognize that I don't need to make eye contact and I don't need to do that. That's the awareness part. I don't need to do that in order to be one. When I don't do it, I am in denial of the oneness that we have. When we don't feed the hungry, visit the imprisoned, care for one another, listen to the words of another who is suffering, to walk with them is to see and to be the embodiment and the realization that we are one. And I hope as we re-entry into the lives that we did not have for a year and a half, that we will not burn up in the re-entry period, that we would not go into restaurants and relationships as an escape from the aloneness. I think it's Matthew Fox who says he calls it amusing ourselves to death, where we think that we are being intimate with others, but we're not. We're just being preoccupied with others because we don't want to be with ourselves. Let me see what time we have. I want to close it out with this one last thing. There's a story about a therapist who told this gentleman, he said, I want you to go home and I want you to spend time with yourself this week and let me know how it goes. And next week he comes back and he goes, how was your time with yourself? And he goes, it was awesome. He says, I got my favorite music. I lied down on the couch and I put the music on. I just listened to music for an hour. And like you said, and he said, no, I didn't say to do that. He says, well, I was alone. He says, I didn't tell you to be alone. I told you to spend time with yourself. He said, I tell you to listen to music. Go try it again next week. And when we get together, we'll see how it goes. Comes back. How did it go? And he goes, oh, it went great. He says, I got this book that I've been wanting to read. And I sat down on my chair and I read for an hour. And I really enjoyed, being alone with the book. He says, I didn't tell you to read a book. And I didn't tell you to be alone. I told you to spend time with yourself. And he did a couple other things and couldn't get it right. And he came back frustrated. And he says, I don't know what you're wanting from me. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. And he says, you know what? He says, if you don't like spending time with yourself, then why would you inflict that on others? When we don't understand the oneness with spirit, our connection to the world, our oneness that is a mystery, then we're doing nothing more than inflicting the self that we've created that is preoccupied, addicted, demanding, moralistic. See, when we don't understand oneness with God and spending time with ourselves, one way out of it is to create routines. Got to have my routine. Got to have my routine. And it turns into legalism, turns into moralism. This is the right way of doing things, but we're really doing that to preoccupy the idea that we don't want to embrace the oneness that we have with the world and with ourselves. Another one is withdrawal. We will withdraw. See, we withdraw within crowds. I know I do. In the middle, I found myself inwardly withdrawing. There are many other things that we do that can eventually become a diagnosis, a neurosis of some sort. And we thought we were doing all the normal things that everybody else was doing, but we weren't paying attention. We weren't intentionally loving and having compassion on ourselves. If we can't love ourselves, hang out with ourselves, have compassion for ourselves, how are we going to recognize and see that God not only loves us, but is fond of us? How are we able to experience the mystery of oneness? See there were two heresies when John was speaking in John about the vine. Two heresies. One was that the Gnostics believed that God was out there somewhere, but distant from us, because matter is essentially evil and spirit is essentially good. So the two can ever be together. So we are matter. So there's an inherent evil there. So the God isn't not even the God that created all things, because the Creator would have to touch Earth, and that would be bad. So there was this distant God that actually emanated a Creator, and the Creator created the world. Therefore, their idea was that Jesus was not really human. He was an emanation of God, not one with God. You hear that? Does that make sense now why John would make such an effort to talk about Jesus and the Father as one and us as one with Jesus? Because the Gnostics at that time were speaking of separation. But then we turn it into, it is Jesus was God, period. And if you don't confess that with your mouth, you're screwed. No, if we don't understand that Jesus, the human being, was the embodiment of the compassion of God and was aware of it, was enlightened by it, then how are we going to do that ourselves? How are we going to understand that ourselves? Breathe that in. Breathe that in. I will leave it with that. And I look forward to seeing you on the live stream next Sunday. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I do a Wake Up with Henry for 7 minutes on Instagram. Henry Rojas _ is my name for that, my tag for that. And I pray you will have an awake and an alert week, noticing oneness with Earth, with others, and with the divine. Amen.